So I ended up drilling out that because this one here is too long. It bottoms out too fast. And they should be about the same size hole. And I don't know if that's going to work or not. This actually gets into the discussion of what's a saw mod. And to me, saw mods come into two categories: fads and performance. And in the realm of performance is modifications that make it easier to perform with the saw, right? And I think starting a saw falls right into that, right? Because if I can't start the damn thing, what good is it? Push that in. See if that's made any difference at all. Actually, it has. Huh. See if there's any gas in this thing. See if I can get it started. It's empty. I mean, it's empty. Well, shoot. But I think that's actually, yeah, that's made a lot of difference right there. Yeah, you can't pull it over. Now you can. It's not easy, but it can pull. I'm going to call that a success. Put it back together. And then tomorrow, I guess I'll put some gasoline in the thing and see if we can't make it make some noise. One of the things I found when I was doing them was if I left a little bit of these in here, I didn't take them all the way down, it actually gave me a little bit better fuel usage. And I think part of what it was, it helps keep it mixed up in the intake side here. Yeah, maybe I'll take this boot off and put the other one on. But the other thing I want to do in this one is I want to do a better job of radiusing these, for sure. And okay. See if this makes any sense. Basically getting the radius is quite a bit larger going into the transfers. I think the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut these back just a little further. Probably don't really have to. I think I made the point there. But let me blow it out a little bit so you can see more. See, my original thought when I was doing this was I didn't have to radius past where I had opened up these skirts. That's not really true. I really have to radius to match where the case intersects with the transfers. And I do the same thing, by the way, on like the 48 millimeter with the smaller transfers, where I radius them back that way. And I don't know, it makes a difference. I guess it's not surprising, but it does. Alright, how about this? Let's break this down. Now, you probably saw me do this once before, right? I think the only thing I need to do here is pop this piston off. I need to get one of these. Remember what I was telling you about? One of the guys got it kind of confused, I believe. See, that's a salvageable piston. I'll probably have to put some rings in there. But it had little particles go through and screw things up. But what happens is these guys here basically deposit a little bit of air that gets picked up by this. And it deposits just a little bit of whatever comes through these things in the transfers, is what happens. And so now you have like a slug of air at the beginning of the transfer port, and then when the mixture comes up from the bottom, it takes that air and rams it out the exhaust. But that's still air that can be mixed with fuel and burn. So, believe it or not, it works. Go back to the magic rag to get that off. Look at that, an OEM pump. See, sometimes all you gotta do is take a rag and stuff it on the flywheel and then push down on it for resistance. It does work. I don't know. I guess I'm gonna have to go to a little more extreme measures. Another one of those no replacement for displacement moments. Boy, I bet that flywheel is on there good. Now the proper way to do this is with one of those pullers. And I don't know, maybe I should do the right way, so at least you see that I know how to do it. The improper way is the way I've done it for decades. So I will do it the proper way this time. Son of a gun. Look at that. Muffler bolts. Alright. This is the old-fashioned way if it don't work. I can't make this happen here. Old-fashioned way. Alright, let's see if I got a hammer. That'll work. You gotta get it off the table a little bit. It has to be raised. For it to pop off like that. So that's how you take off a flywheel. The proper way. Everything looks good in there. So what I'm going to do now is, since I got the clutch off and the flywheel off, I feel now that I can probably take the handle off and then split the cases. But I would strongly suggest, if you're working on saws, to find one of these flywheel tools here. It's a Husqvarna shop tool. Highly recommend buying one. I mean, this will work, but it'll flex the flywheel a little bit, and I don't know if it'll be damaged afterwards. I mean, I've done it for a long time and it hasn't, but I don't know. It makes me nervous. How's that? Comes out. This is going to come out from the handle. Position right there. That comes out. That's all full of garbage. So I'm going to have to dig that out a little bit. I want you to check this out. Aftermarket versus OEM. Check out that bucking spike. you don't think this one had a little bit of cranking going on, you don't know the guy who had it for last. This saw got beat. I'll take that right off of there. You can almost guarantee that was stripped. Alright, let me see if there's any bar oil in this before I split the cases. There really isn't, so it's okay. Let me take the oil pump off next. Pull that, I'm going to pull the tray. Right, this comes out. Throttle, fuel line, and bust this off here. Actually, I just took it off the switch. Leave the lines right on the cases. Now I want you to see something on the way the handle works. One of the mysteries in how to take the 372 handle off is knowing where that chamfer is right there. You got to rotate it out there, and when you put it back in, you got to go capture that positioning stud and go push it right back in there. But that's the secret, is knowing where that chamfer is. So now, and this is an OEM handle. Look at that. Huh. Okay. Oh, I remember. I do remember doing that. Message of this story is we can overthink stuff, and often do. Now the reason why I have to pull the oil pump is because I need to push on the case in order to get the crank on. By the way, it's a lot easier taking the oil pump on and off and this tube on and off when the chain brake is not there. Actually, I can blow that out with the air too, and that'll make a difference. Little ring. Set that right there. Here's the collar. Now, when I put this together last time, I think... No, they didn't do it. See, one of the things you need... Oh, yes, it did. See, I put this in there. I pulled this out and put this in. The reason why I know it is because there's one of those little rubber seals in there. And if this was as it came from Farmertech, that wouldn't be in there. Alright, let's get this thing crank off of there. Let me clean the cases up. came right out. Let's see if the bearing came out of the case. Nope, the bearing stayed right in there, and the bearing is fine. Nothing wrong with that bearing. Let me push it out of this side. So really the only thing I need to do on this is to literally just set another crank in here and put it back together. Clean it up. But see how easy these things come apart? I mean, that is just beyond easy. You know? Pull that one apart. Now, here's the test. One of the things I had mentioned before is where the bearing is in the case after you've done this operation. And this one stayed in the case. You see that? How that's still recessed? Number one, that bearing is just fine. It's a steel cage bearing. It was a Chinese bearing, but it's still a good bearing. There's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely nothing wrong. This is a aftermarket crank, and it's not worth a crap. And basically what happened was the added pressure, it had a cheaper bearing, and the bearing failed. Simple as that. And but for the most part, I didn't even tear the gasket. I mean, I could literally put a crank in here and put it back together. It would probably work. Wipe it out, clean it up a little bit. See how that gasket's still there? You know, we could put that thing right back together and probably wouldn't matter. That gasket's not hurt at all. Of course, that's not what I'm going to do. I'm going to clean these cases up as best I can. And see, that bearing's fine too. Both these bearings are fine. And these are the Chinese bearings. And that's smooth and tight. Did not fail, even with all that crap going through it. And I'm just going to leave them. They're fine. That's part of the exercise here. I don't want to put a lot of money into it, you know. Notice that the aftermarket cases have a larger diameter, but they're still steel locating pins. That's good stuff. Got to make sure you have that little rubber bumper. I need to put a hose on that. It wasn't in there, but it needs one. And I'm going to take this crank right here and pull that bearing out of there. I got to pull the bearing off. Once I got that bearing off, we're just going to set it right in there. But I think that's enough for a video. What we're going to do to this saw is, this is all Chinese cases and stuff. OEM crank, OEM handle. I'm going to radius these more, clean this all up obviously. I'm going to put an OEM boot. I'm going to take this one right here actually, where I left the vanes in there, and then put that on. And hopefully build this up and see if it runs. Wouldn't that be funny? And I guess the point of this whole thing is, again, you don't have to have the white suits on to do this kind of work. The special tools I've used, flywheel puller. Get one. Get one of these flywheel pullers. It works on a variety of different saws, and basically it threads into the, you take screws and you thread them into the little bosses for, you know, the pull start. But this is going to save you a lot of damage. So that's very important. Clutch tool. They're cheap. You know, get yourself one of these. One of these, a rag. And of course, one of these case splitters. They go for like 50 bucks online. Really, really handy. This one happens to be the Husqvarna OEM shop tool. I've used it a lot. I have one that I did for Hudzel, and I spread these apart a little bit so they work on a 390. But it's the same basic concept. I think the other set of tools that you really need is I have my own pullers, but you can buy the Husqvarna case fitting tool for whatever saw you want. HL Supply sells them, Fix My Toys sells them, but they're very, very good for putting cases together. There is no excuse not to use case fitting tools to assemble the cases on a chainsaw, especially not a Husqvarna, because both the OEMs and there's some aftermarket versions that work pretty well too. Buy yourself the case fitting tools. Don't fight with it. You got seal drivers. I have them all basically. And the ones I don't have I make. That's a seal driver as well. So the tools that I'm going to use to build this saw and finish this saw, and I think if you want to do this kind of a game, kind of a minimum set of things you should have. I have an inductance tachometer. I think that's important for the guys who want to do porting and follow the cookbook that guys do online, which you need a degree wheel. I went and got a chuck online and I just grafted the degree wheel to that chuck, and it works. Had it for years and years. Die grinder with carbide bits, and I like to use this one here for doing the finish work and doing the upper transfers, the short tool. Now we have caps, so you don't need this one as much anymore, but I still use it some. I use it some today, but these two things here have been the bulwark of my grinding for the last decade, last 10 years or more. Impact wrench, special rag for taking off the clutch tool, right? I think this is very important. It's subtle, but it's very important. Pulling the flywheels off correctly, it doesn't crack the aluminum. Basically, they sometimes have a steel core where they cast aluminum around it. And if you use the old-fashioned redneck style, sometimes you flex that, and you can see the little spider cracks on them. With this right here, you won't see that. It's a much safer tool. It's the right way of doing it. For squeezing the chain brake spring, splitting the cases, case splitter. Now I've gone with a digital torque wrench, and I've used that to put the flywheels on now for quite some time, and the Huskies are like 24, 26 foot-pounds, and it gives me a sense of security to make sure that I've done that flywheel nut to the proper torques on those saws. And ring compressor, case fitting tools. And then on the Huskies, the older ones, you have a 4mm Allen and you have a 5mm Allen. Obviously a screwdriver and scrunch. I like using these to pop out the wrist pin clips. I like using these to put them in. It's just me. Everyone has their own way of doing things. I happen to think this saves me unbelievable amounts of time. A good impact driver. It really, really helps me out. And this guy right here does too. It really does, this light. So those are really the basics that I would think are required to play this game. And I'd say that there was a time when finding these case fitting tools were tough. And you know, I would use alternative methods like the heat method, stuff like that. But in this day and age where these are easy to find, and like I said, I'll make some for a person if they really need them, if they can't find them. There's no excuse to do anything but using a case fitting tool type system to pull cases together, pull cranks through it. There's just no reason not to. You know, I've got mine. They work good. The reason I use a handle on mine is so you have one hand free. You can let that handle sit on the table, and you can have the other hand on the saw. There's no real need to get my tools. I would say that if you're a shop that does a lot of them, maybe it makes sense, but they cost twice as much as just getting the OEM tool set that will last you a lifetime. And there's a bunch of Husqvarna dealers have used them forever and ever. So I don't necessarily recommend my set. Now who needs to buy the set that I use and make is the steel guys, because the steel case fitting tools really stink. And I basically took this concept, improved it with a handle, and made them in the same threads for steel, so steel can fit their cases together with the same ease that the Husqvarna dealers can. That's really the people who should be buying mine, is the steel guys. But anyway, I think that's a wrap. I got this apart. I got to pull that bearing off, and that'll be a video how to pull the bearings off. I'll clean up the cases, and then we're going to slap that crank together. I'm going to clean up that cylinder, and maybe I'll put a pop-up in there to get some more compression. Do a muffler mod and see if this thing makes the right kind of noises again. Won't that be fun? I think what I'm going to do with this saw is I think I'm going to give it to somebody, and they have no idea it's coming. But I also have a hunch that when they run this, it's going to change a whole lot of things in their world. A whole lot. You know, as much as I was bagging on this saw, I just didn't like it. The one thing I can say, this was that G372 XT. That cylinder is not bad at all. It really is not bad. You know, that plating survived the bearing coming apart and a bunch of crap going up and down. We're going to use that stuff again. I'm just going to throw it right back in. Take a look at the top of the piston where it started beating on the top when the bearing went out. When that bearing came apart, it let the piston go up a little higher. Started wrapping the top. How do you like that? Maybe that's a way of increasing your squish, is having a loose rod bearing, right? That'll send that piston right through the top. So, I don't know. Maybe I wonder if I could take that crank apart and put another rod bearing in there. That might be fun. All right. Video. I got a video.